Welcome back, everybody, to the Tennessee Titans franchise here on Madden 23. Today's episode is a pretty big one. The 2025 NFL Draft is here. We have learned about all these prospects through the in-season prospect profiles. We did a full deep dive with our draft preview, which was the last episode. And of course, the entirety of the NCAA Next Up Dynasty is designed to follow these players' collegiate careers leading up to the NFL Draft. If you would like to use these players and this draft class in your Madden franchise, you can if you're on the PlayStation 5, as it is up on the draft class file sharer. I've gotten some questions about why I have not uploaded the draft classes for my 2K series onto the file sharer. That is because 2K has not let me upload the classes this year, and I really don't know why. It's ironic because last year I couldn't upload them on Madden. So anyway, if you want to download the draft class and you're on the PlayStation 5, it is titled Titans Draft 3 in all caps, spelled as it is on screen. Once you type it in, you should be able to download it, and you'll be able to use all of these players. The first two draft classes of the series are also on the file share as well. If you go to where it says search for online ID and type in my PSN, again spelled as it is on screen, then you can download any of the first three draft classes for this series. As we take a look at this draft for our Tennessee Titans, we're in a really interesting spot because we filled most of our holes through free agency, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, by adding Michael Pierce and Trey Hendrickson. And we've got a lot of flexibility for what we can do in this draft, especially considering we have 2 picks in the first round and 2 picks in the second round. So we can move up and down the board as we please. We can make a splash for a proven star-level player already in the league. There's a number of different directions that we can go with, and I'm really excited to try to figure out how we can put this team in the best position for the next 5, 10 plus years out. So let's get it started. The 2025 NFL Draft is on the clock, and the Houston Texans have the number 1 pick. Duke quarterback Justin Tucker might be the best prospect in this draft class. However, the Texans just drafted a QB in the first round last year. They've been focusing on making his life easier by adding DJ Moore and Aaron Jones to the offense. And while Kane Sanders did not have a great rookie season, I think they are committed to him. However, on the flip side, Kane Sanders has never been as good of a prospect as Justin Tucker has. So if the Texans were to move this pick, I think there are 3 teams who are really going to try to get it. You have the Las Vegas Raiders, who just cut Derek Carr, the New York Jets, who are ready to move on from Zach Wilson, and the New Orleans Saints, who did sign former Titan Garrett Pace last offseason, but he's not going to stop them from making a big move. All 3 of these teams pick in the top 10, which is an easy asset to start the negotiations with. I imagine this was not an easy decision for the Texans, but ultimately they were able to agree to a deal. The team moving up to number 1 will be the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders will be sending picks 3, along with 2 second-rounders, 1 this year and 1 next year, to Houston to finalize the deal. If this was real life, I don't think this would be enough for the Texans to part with the number 1 pick, but it is still a lot, and I think picks are valued a little bit differently in Madden as opposed to real life. So with the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select quarterback Justin Tucker out of Duke. No major surprise here. The reigning Heisman Trophy winner will be the number 1 pick. Justin Tucker will be rocking the silver and black as he is headed to Las Vegas. Justin Tucker's a phenomenal quarterback prospect, a 4-year starter at Duke. His development has been very linear, and I think that's a good thing. He has shown significant progress in his development all 4 seasons as a starter for Duke. 6'4", 225 pounds. He's got a pretty strong arm, pretty accurate, pretty mobile. He checks all the boxes, and he was the best player in the country this year, winning the Heisman Trophy, leading Duke to a college football playoff appearance, although he did look a little bit underwhelming in that 1 playoff game. We do play against the Raiders in Week 12 at home, so we will get to see Tucker as a rookie. With the number 2 pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Nnamdi Olushanu, offensive tackle out of Middle Tennessee State. I would have expected this to be one of the top defensive players in this draft, but this is not a bad pick by any stretch. The Falcons need to focus on protecting their young quarterback, Sidney McDonald, who they drafted in round 1 last year. and their left tackle, Jake Matthews, allowed 20 sacks a season ago. So Olujanu will come in and be the blindside blocker. So now the Texans are on the board at 3, and I think this has worked out really well for them. The top 2 defensive players are still on the board. So with the 3rd pick, the Houston Texans will select linebacker Sandalio Cortez out of Maryland. This is very fascinating. In the draft preview, I compared Cortez to Tyree Wilson, and it's ironic because I think there's a real shot that Tyree Wilson is the top defensive player off the board in real life, even if a lot of people don't see it coming. That exactly is going to end up being the case here with Cortez. In a vacuum, I don't think it's a bad pick, but I think Adrian Moore from Oklahoma and Babatunde Mamadou probably would have been better picks for the Texans. So the Bears are laughing all the way to the bank and back. They have the top 2 defensive players still on the board. They could also draft a quarterback here if they wanted to, but they will go defense with Babatunde Mamadou out of Texas. This is a home run pick for Chicago. Mamadou is 6'8", 270 pounds. He's a total freak show, and he's a jack of all trades. He can rush the passer, he can stop the run, and he's very rangy in coverage. The Bears have built around big-time linebackers in the past, like Dick Butkus and Brian Urlacher. Mamadou is next up. So that brings up the Eagles at 5, and in my opinion, this is the most pivotal pick in the entire draft. The next 2 teams on the clock, the Jets and the Saints, both need a quarterback, and I think they both really like Romeo Colochi out of Oklahoma. A lot of teams like Colochi as well, so because of that, the Eagles are being sent a bunch of trade offers. I think the value of this pick has gone up today because Adrian Moore, the pass rusher out of Oklahoma, is still on the board, and he'd be an easy pick for the Eagles. But with all these teams trying to send in a trade offer, Philadelphia might be hard-pressed to say no. They're trying to build around their young quarterback in Masaru Lee, who they drafted in the top 10 a few years ago. And GM Howie Roseman wants as many top 40 draft picks as possible to try to surround Lee with some big-time talent. Ultimately, the Eagles would decide to pass on Adrian Moore and trade the pick away. They got an offer that was too hard to pass up. Is it going to be from a team like the Jets or the Saints looking to make a small leap to ensure they get their guy? Or is it going to be a team down the board? I think we're going to flip this series on its side right now because the Tennessee Titans are moving up to the number 5 pick in the draft. The trade is pretty straightforward. Our first 3 picks this year for number 5. The Eagles wanted as many top 40 picks as possible. Well, here's 3 of them. Number 19 and 27 in the first round, along with pick 40, and they would accept it. I did not want to have to give up 2 1s, but in order to get the player who I'm trading up for, I think it's worth it. We're able to keep all of our picks next year, and we still have a number of selections this year. So now the question is, who are the Titans trading up for? At first value, you might think it would be Romeo Colochi, the quarterback out of Oklahoma. That could make sense, but I think Adrian Moore, the pass rusher out of Oklahoma, also could make sense. The Titans' defensive line was their big weakness last year, and if you watched the college football playoff in the NCAA Next Up series, Adrian Moore was a game wrecker. I did not in any way expect him to fall to the number 5 pick, and he could completely transform the Titans' defense. However, Romeo Colochi is an awesome quarterback prospect as well. The Titans are not sold on Malik Willis, although he did have the best season of his career last year. So one of these 2 players will be the selection. One of these 2 guys is going to be a focal point for the Titans going forward. Will Adrian Moore be the new star of the defense, or are the Titans looking to draft a franchise quarterback with Romeo Colochi? Which Oklahoma Sooner are the Titans mortgaging multiple high draft picks to get? It's time to make the biggest decision of this series so far. With the 5th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select, out of Oklahoma, Romeo Colochi, quarterback. So there you go. The Titans have moved up all the way to the 5th overall pick to select a QB. Romeo Colochi is the new face of this franchise and the new starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. The Titans drop a bombshell on draft night, moving up to get a new quarterback despite the fact that Malik Willis played pretty well last season. So Colochi's going to come in with hidden development. The physical ratings across the board look really good. 89 speed, 93 excel, 94 throw power. So the question is, why exactly are the Titans doing this? They just traded 3 top 40 picks for a quarterback when they already have a pretty good young QB on the roster. Going into the offseason, I knew I had to make a decision. Malik Willis is on the final year of his contract, and he made himself a lot of money this year. However, I was not convinced that he could be a franchise quarterback, and ultimately I decided to make the decision to upgrade by moving up all the way to 5 and drafting Romeo Colochi. So now that begs the question, what type of prospect are the Titans getting with Colochi? Out of structure, he is a phenomenal passer. He can make plays with his legs. He's got a strong arm. He's tough. He's physical. He's dynamic. He checks off all the boxes you look for in a quarterback prospect. Strong arm, pretty good accuracy, great leader, good with his legs, phenomenal under pressure. We saw him lead Oklahoma to the college football playoff and take them to the national championship. Colochi led Oklahoma to a blowout win on the road in Tuscaloosa against Alabama in the first round. They demolished Virginia Tech in the second round. In the semifinals, they beat Florida, who was the number 1 team in the country to that point. Oklahoma did not get the job done in the national championship game against Ohio State, but that is not at the fault of Romeo Colochi, who played very well in all 4 of Oklahoma's playoff games. He's 6'3", 213 pounds, a 2-year starter with the Sooners. It's ironic because he was the backup for Masaru Lee, the Eagles quarterback, who we got this pick from. Colochi's development from last year to this year has been notable. As a junior, he was good, but he had some inconsistent games and some rough moments. As a senior, he was a lot better. Over the last 2 years, he's thrown for over 7,000 yards. He's ran for nearly 2,000 more. He has only thrown 12 interceptions, along with over 70 passing touchdowns. And those stats don't even share his stats throughout the college football playoff. During the 4 games in the playoff, he threw for over 1,300 yards. He threw for 11 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions, while throwing for at least 72% in terms of his completion percentage in all 4 playoff games. There is really no weakness with Romeo Colochi's game, and in terms of being a high-level quarterback prospect, I think he's right up there with guys like Clyde Williamson, Cade Hutchinson, and Justin Tucker, who have all won Heisman trophies and have all been number 1 picks in this series. I would argue Colochi's maybe a better prospect than all of those guys. Romeo will come in as a 76 overall, not counting his loss in morale for whatever reason. He is NFL ready. He is going to be our week 1 starting quarterback. Not only does he have a high floor in my opinion, but the ceiling is very high as well. There are some ratings that could use some work, but I'm really optimistic about Romeo Colochi's future here in Tennessee. We did trade away our top 3 draft picks. We no longer have 2 first-rounders. We don't pick again until the late 2nd. But the real question is, what does this mean for Malik Willis? He had a good season last year for the Tennessee Titans, and I think he is a good player. But with Romeo Colochi here, there is no reason to keep Malik Willis around as a backup, and we will explore trading him. Willis played his first full season last year, and he was solid. He wasn't bad. I wouldn't say he was great either. Willis had some really, really good games, but he also had some very not-so-good performances. He was inconsistent in the playoffs. He performed well in our loss to Kansas City, but he didn't perform well in our win against the Steelers. So I don't really know what to make of him, and because of that, I don't really want to give him a long-term extension. And with how he played this year, he made himself quite a bit of money. I'm curious to see what his value is on the trade market, and spoiler alert, we will look to trade him here on draft night. So Romeo Colochi is now a Titan. The Jets are in shambles as they will draft an Oklahoma defensive player, but not Adrian Moore. Instead, it's Buck Ratliff, who is very raw, but has a super high ceiling. He's a freak athlete. So the Jets really liked Romeo Colochi. I'm 100% convinced he would have been their pick here at number 6, but instead they get screwed by us jumping up to get him. With the number 7 pick, the New Orleans Saints, who I think also would have picked Romeo had he been on the board, select Myair Jahir, pass rusher out of Kent State. This is interesting. Adrian Moore is falling down boards quickly, and I'm not really sure why. The Saints drafted a pass rusher, but not Moore, who going into the draft I thought was a lock to be a top 2 pick, and he is still here at number 8. Is there something I'm missing with him? So the Green Bay Packers will now have an opportunity to add more to their defense, and they're not going to. Instead, they draft John Wiggins out of Michigan State. Wiggins was not the number one projected receiver on the board, but I think he is the best receiver in this class, giving young quarterback Genesis Moon another weapon to throw the ball to. Wiggins is a fantastic player, in my opinion, the best wide receiver prospect we have had in this series so far. So Minnesota can now get more, and they pass on him as well for Jablay Skype. I will say he comes in as an 81 overall, tied for the highest rated player in the draft class. And I say tied because there's another 81 overall still on the board. So Moore has fallen all the way here to 10. The Miami Dolphins are up next, and Adrian Moore's wait will finally come to a close. As we look at his ratings, I think these teams might have been right to have him fall. He is only a 77 overall with normal development. He's not a bad player, and I don't think this is a bad pick for the Dolphins, but maybe he is not this blue chip defensive talent who we had kind of thought he was going into the draft. So Moore falls all the way to 10. He is a Dolphin. That'll bring up the Dallas Cowboys here at number 11. They just had Tyron Smith and Zach Martin retire, so they're going to replace Smith by going with Connor McCarthy, the offensive tackle out of Stanford. Had we not traded up and decided to just stick with Malik Willis, McCarthy would have been my top target for the 19th pick in the draft. So it's a relief knowing that we don't have to worry about that now since, well, we don't have the 19th pick, and he ended up falling nowhere near pick 19. The Cleveland Browns are going to make their first rounder of the entire series as they will look to bolster the pass rush with Karamoko Saladogo out of Kansas State. He also only has normal development, coming in as a 77 overall. Saladogo was phenomenal as a junior. This past season as a senior, he was a little bit worse, but still really good. And he will pair up alongside Myles Garrett on the edge for the Browns. That could be a really nice duo going forward. The New York Giants are on the board here at pick 13, and they select wide receiver out of Indiana, Trenton Malice, who was the top projected receiver in this draft class. However, he does look a little bit worse in terms of his base rating and development trait in comparison to John Wiggins, who ended up going before him. Not a bad pick by the Giants, but I think Malice might have been a little bit overhyped. The Los Angeles Chargers are on the board here at pick 14, coming off a slightly disappointing season, as they select Jeremiah Jones, the cornerback out of Michigan. He is skinny, but he's long. 6'4", 176 pounds. He's got a 6'7" wingspan, very athletic. Only a one-year starter for Michigan, but he had a great senior year. He was one of the best defensive backs in the country, and he will join a young and talented Chargers secondary. The Denver Broncos are on the clock, but not for long. The Philadelphia Eagles are moving up. They originally traded down from 5 to 19. Now they're using 19 to move up 4 spots, swapping a 3 for a 5. The player they are going to draft is Ryder Pratt, the offensive guard out of Kansas. I really like this move for Philadelphia. Again, they prioritized top 40 picks, and they didn't have to move any other than pick 19 to get Ryder Pratt, who's a really, really good player. He will make Masar Uzlee's life a whole lot easier. That'll bring up the Arizona Cardinals at 16. Speaking of really good players, they select Giacomo Vivaro, the linebacker out of Florida. He is the other 81 overall, so he is tied for the highest rated player in this draft. The Cardinals lost Isaiah Simmons. He signed with Tampa Bay in free agency, so here's your replacement. Vivaro's just as big and athletic as Isaiah Simmons, but I think he's a lot more polished coming out of school. And in terms of just pure talent, he might be the best player in the entire draft class, which says quite a bit. At pick 17, the Patriots select Sterling Weaver, offensive tackle out of Mississippi State. The rating does not look great right off the bat. He's only a 68. He does have hidden development, though, and there's a lot of room to grow, but he is a little bit more raw than I think we had thought, so this might be a little bit of a reach for the New England Patriots. That'll bring out the Baltimore Ravens here at pick 18, and they will select Tykeem Rodgers out of Georgia. A few years ago, I would have been convinced that Rodgers would be the number one defensive player in this class off the board. He was electric during his sophomore season. A little bit disappointing, however, as a junior and a senior, but he did play pretty well down the stretch. He had a scoop and score during the college football playoff, and no team has a better track record of developing athletic pass rushers than the Baltimore Ravens. The Denver Broncos at pick 19 select Nigel Deacon, cornerback out of Georgia. This pick has moved a lot. It was originally the Rams pick, then it came over to us as part of the Jeffrey Simmons trade. We used it to move up and get Romeo Colochi, and then the Eagles moved it to go up and get Ryder Pratt. So it finally gets a home here in Denver, and Nigel Deacon's a good pick for them. Madamuto Damba, wide receiver out of Cal, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cal had a lot of movement at the quarterback position throughout the past couple of years. Rufus Motley got injured. Marquise Harris came in. But regardless of who was at quarterback this year, Damba was phenomenal, regardless of who was throwing him the ball. And I think him and George Pickens can be a really nice long-term duo in Pittsburgh. The Seattle Seahawks at 21 select Sean Marshall, safety out of UCLA. The top safety is off the board. It's a really deep safety class. I think we could see some more going in the late first round, if not certainly early in the second round. And Marshall will pair up nicely with Jamal Adams. The Colts are on the clock at 22, but not for long. They are moving down 16 spots. The Jets are going to be trading picks 38, along with a second rounder next year to get the job done. So who are the Jets moving up for? Is it a quarterback? Perhaps. Well, the answer is yes. The third quarterback is off the board, and it's Barrett Cherokee out of Oregon. Over Aram Kachakan, over Kareem Kamara. Cherokee is the Jets guy. They really liked Romeo Colochi, but they had a very high grade on Cherokee as well. So this worked out a lot better than it could have for the Jets, who didn't panic. They waited, and they ended up moving up and getting another guy at the position who they really like. The Jacksonville Jaguars at pick 24 select Udoka Akuchi out of Florida State. Talented offensive tackle who is an ox, 99 strength. That looks pretty good. Cam Robinson's getting a little bit older, so there's your replacement. The Buccaneers select Orlando Luke, offensive tackle out of LSU. I imagine Tristan Wirfs will probably move over to the left side now, getting some more offensive linemen for your young quarterback, Sterling Yorkshire, who had a pretty good season last year, leading the Buccaneers to a playoff spot. With the 26th pick, the 49ers are now on the clock, and they will select Hyman Crawley, the linebacker out of Cal. He's more of an off-ball cover guy. I think him and Fred Warner together is going to be a really, really good duo. So, yeah, opposing offenses, beware. Those two together are going to be nasty. So that'll bring up the Buffalo Bills with the 27th pick. The Bills have been close to the Super Bowl for a while now as they select Moses Elise, the cornerback out of Louisiana Tech. Elise is a talented player. Despite being a smaller school guy, he's been very good over the last 3 seasons with the Bulldogs, and he will add to a talented Bills secondary. The Eagles now select Mark Williams, the pass rusher out of Indiana. Leave it to Howie Roseman to move up and down the board, ending up with 2 first-round picks, one of which is an offensive lineman, and the other of which is a defensive lineman. That's very on brand for him. Williams was the active leader in sacks amongst college football players, and he will be a nice addition to their pass rush. The Panthers go with a quarterback, Aram Kachakan out of Georgia. So Baker Mayfield's on the last year of his deal. He's been pretty good over the last 3 years for Carolina, but I think they're in the same boat as we are. They don't want to pay him, so rather than moving up like we did, they're going to stay with their pick and draft Kachakan, who had a phenomenal season last year for the Dogs. We're now nearing the conclusion of the first round. The Detroit Lions are on the clock next after back-to-back NFC Championship losses as they select Samson Goldwell, the offensive tackle out of Nebraska. Similar as we talked about to the Bucs, you got to get young offensive linemen for your young quarterback. Again, I think probably Penei Sewell moves over to left tackle long term. With the 30th pick, the Kansas City Chiefs, who beat the Titans in the playoffs last year, select Tyrone Smith, the pass rusher out of Arizona. Pretty solid pick. I think this is a high-floored player who's going to be able to contribute right away. I don't think he's ever going to become elite, but the Chiefs make themselves better with their pick, and that's not good news for us. The defending NFC champion, Washington Commanders, are on the clock here at pick 31. They've been linked to drafting a quarterback, but they are not going to do so, instead picking Darren French, the safety out of Clemson. I think Washington would have been making a big mistake had they drafted a quarterback. Desmond Ridder just led them to the Super Bowl last year, so I don't see why they would give up on him. I think this is a much better use of their draft assets by adding a guy like Darren French, who's a very, very good safety. The defending champion Cincinnati Bengals will round out the first round as they also will go into the secondary with Troy Danham, the cornerback out of Cal. So another Cal Golden Bear is off the board here in the first round. Danham's not the biggest guy, 5'10", 182 pounds, but he's been very good for the Golden Bear defense. As a sophomore, he was phenomenal. As a junior, he was a little worse, but still good enough to declare for the draft and ultimately be a first-round pick. So that'll wrap up the first round. It was certainly an interesting one. The Raiders moving up to number 1 overall to select Justin Tucker. The Titans moving up all the way to 5, jumping the Jets and the Saints for Romeo Colochi. And we had other surprises as well, like Sandalio Cortez being the number 1 defensive player off the board, and Adrian Moore having a Laramie Tunsil-esque fall, going all the way to 10, getting drafted by, ironically, the Miami Dolphins. So that'll bring us into the second round. We're going to move through the rest of the draft quicker because we're not going to go over every pick in depth, but rather the notable ones. There are some good players still on the board, including the Biletnikoff winner, Jabari Kruger. Got a lot of good players in the secondary still left as well. Got plenty of good linebackers here too. The Titans traded away pick 40, which they got last year in the McCall Hardman trade with Green Bay. That pick was used to move up and get Romeo Colochi. So the Titans only have their own second rounder currently at 27th in the round. But that's going to change because we will be trading away Malik Willis. There's only one more team who really needs a quarterback, and that's the New Orleans Saints. They have Jameis Winston, and I think they're ready to move on. Jameis is just not good. He has played worse in each of the last 3 seasons. This year, statistically, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. So that kind of poses the question of what is Malik Willis's trade value? He's a good young quarterback, and because of that, he is absolutely a positive asset. Also, ironically, he's teammates with Garrett Pace again. So I think this trade is pretty fair. Malik Willis and a future 4th for the 39th pick in the draft. Again, Malik Willis is a good young player, and the Saints, I think, are going to view him as their franchise quarterback and a guy who they want to keep around long term. So a franchise quarterback for a second-round pick sounds pretty good. Willis is a lot more proven than the other quarterbacks on the board because none of them have played an NFL snap. As for us, we move up back into the early second round. We traded away pick 40 in our trade up, but now we get pick 39. So Jordan James is the first player off the board, corner to the Texans. Grant Rambo to the Falcons. The Georgia Bulldog stays in Georgia. He will be going after the other NFC South quarterbacks. The Texans got this pick from the Raiders just now. They go with Maurice Smart. Yaya Mabuki, the pass rusher to the Bears, really improving their defense. The Eagles select Alec Padfield, safety out of Clemson. And then the Colts, with their first pick of the day, select Harry Ragunan, the pass rusher out of UNLV. So that'll bring the Tennessee Titans on the clock with their second pick of the day, which they just got in exchange for Malik Willis. We're in an interesting scenario here because there are some good players on the board, don't get me wrong, but none of these guys really intrigue me for this pick specifically. I've done some searching, and I really want to get a big-time player on the offensive side of the ball. There are not many offensive tackles available, but there are some weapons. So I did some digging, and I found some guys who could be available for trade. The Eagles have a lot of receivers, and Devontae Smith is on the final year of his deal. Garrett Wilson is also on the last year of his deal. The Jets just traded for Christian Kirk, and Garrett Wilson does not want to be there. What about Kyle Pitts with the Atlanta Falcons? The Falcons have really built around their young receivers like Drake London and Juju Smith-Schuster. London has become one of the best receivers in the NFL, period. He's a total stud. And Juju is in multiple 1,000-yard receiving seasons in Atlanta as well. Ever since Juju signed with the Falcons, Kyle Pitts has taken on a much smaller role within the offense. It's no secret he's a very, very talented player, but you have to use him right. In the first season of this series, Pitts was phenomenal. He was the best tight end in football, but the last 2 seasons, he's barely averaged over 40 yards a game. He's on the final year of his contract. And for a guy who averages 40 receiving yards a game, I don't think Atlanta's going to want to pay him long term. So I came up with a trade that I think is fair. Pick 39, Roger McCreary, and pick 159 for Kyle Pitts in the 95th pick. Roger McCreary is a really good young player. He has superstar development. He was our number 4 corner last year, but he still got on the field for over 50% of our defensive snaps, and he played well. He's a good player. He will start alongside A.J. Terrell in Atlanta. So there's a part of me that's like, this isn't really a fair trade. Kyle Pitts is a 24-year-old, 95 overall X Factor. On the other hand, I feel like we might be giving up too much. For a tight end, we're giving up a top 40 pick and a really good young player with Roger McCreary. But ultimately, I think because of that, this deal is fair enough, and we are adding a big-time weapon to the offense with Kyle Pitts. I think Romeo Colochi is going to love throwing Pitts the ball. He is a wide receiver, but in a tight end's body. He is an electric weapon who, on paper, is one of the most talented tight ends in football. I will say we don't really use the tight end position a whole lot in our offense over the last 3 years, but you bet your sweet behind that that's going to change because of the addition of Kyle Pitts. He is on the final year of his contract, so this is absolutely a risky trade. But I'm confident he can play very well with the best quarterback he's ever played with and a pretty good group of weapons around him. I think we can get him back to 2022 Kyle Pitts and hopefully sign him to a long-term extension. So that's something. We just added Kyle Pitts to our offense. The Falcons, with their pick, select Dominique Lee out of Iowa. Moving forward, the Eagles got this pick from us earlier today. They go with Brian Bowen from Florida State. And then Thompson to the Vikings. He would have been a candidate if we had not just traded for Kyle Pitts. Kareem Kamara, quarterback out of Arizona, to the Dolphins. This is a really interesting pick. The Dolphins signed Jalen Hurts last offseason, and he was okay, but I don't think they're convinced he's their long-term guy. Kamara's got the physical upside to be a total star in this league. He's not the most polished. I don't think he's going to play as a rookie, but the ceiling with him is very, very high. The Cleveland Browns at pick 43 select Sway Rhinehand, the pass rusher out of Michigan. The Chiefs select Kramer Gildeford. Of course they do. The Chiefs just add another big-time weapon to the offense. So the Kansas City Chiefs receiving core is now Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, Calvin Ridley, Travis Kelce, and Kramer Gildeford, who is a big 6'5" jump ball machine. Gildeford was the best receiver in the country 2 years ago as a junior. This past season as a senior, he was still really good despite a major drop-off in quarterback play for Houston. Speaking of quarterbacks, we've got another one off the board to the Giants. It's Scotty Kimbrell II out of USC. Kimbrell had his best season as a starter for the Trojans this year, leading them to a Big Ten championship win and a college football playoff appearance. He did struggle in their lone playoff game, losing to Ohio State, ironically after beating them in the conference championship. The Los Angeles Chargers are up next, and they select Cannon McMullen. The first running back is off the board. McMullen, during his sophomore season, he was originally a backup. The starter got injured, and McMullen lit the college scene on fire, leading Arkansas to an appearance in the Orange Bowl. The past 2 seasons, Arkansas has not been as good, but McMullen is still a stud. Walker Charleston, tight end to the Denver Broncos. The top tight end is off the board. And then Ernie Capellar is picked by the Cardinals. Fascinating. Are they not sold on Kyler Murray? Capellar is a weird player. He has struggled in big games throughout his career. He's been very inconsistent, but the talent is there, and he did have a really good senior season with the Florida Gators, who only lost 2 games this year, both of which were to Romeo Colochi and the Oklahoma Sooners. Malachi Edwards, safety to the New England Patriots. The Ravens get Napoleon Christian, linebacker. The Rams, with their first pick, get Dieter Jacobs from Georgia, the defensive tackle. And then the Steelers get Jeremy Cox, a safety out of Indiana. So that'll bring us to Seattle, but not for long. The Tennessee Titans are moving up to try to get a guy they really like. The Titans will not be trading their late second rounder, 59, in the process. Instead, we'll be trading away both of our third rounders, 91 and 95. Pick 95 we just got from Atlanta in the Kyle Pitts trade. We will also receive pick 181 as well. The players projected from 80 to 120 don't really interest me, and those are the guys we'd be looking at with our third rounders, so I would just rather 2 late second rounders. There are a number of guys I like in this range, but there's one in particular who I do fear would be selected within the next 6 or so picks before we would get another opportunity to draft somebody. So with the 21st pick in the second round of the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Amani Ward, defensive back out of Georgia. The Titans have a good secondary. That was the strength of the defense last year, but not a lot of the pieces in the secondary are under contract. Kevin Byard's playing on the franchise tag, and he's 32. Juan Thornhill's a free agent at the end of the year. Chidobe Awuzie is a free agent. Caleb Farley is a free agent. Cardell Simpson's a free agent in 2 years. And Roger McCreary, we just traded away to the Atlanta Falcons. Amani Ward's a great player. He has been a 2-year starter at strong safety with Georgia. He's a very versatile player. You can put him at strong safety. You can put him at free safety. You can put him inside at cornerback. And I think at least this season we are going to use him in the Roger McCreary role as the number 4 corner on the field in dime packages. I assume both Byard and Thornhill will not be back next year, so Amani Ward will be able to start at one of those safety spots in a season from now. Ward's ball skills have drastically improved this year as a senior. He picked off 3 passes and was really good in coverage. In run support, he's got some work to do, but he's a tough player. He doesn't mind getting physical. He's a pretty good tackler. And I think he's a guy who's just very well-rounded. There aren't many weaknesses to his game. He forced 4 fumbles as a junior. He didn't have any this year as a senior, but I do think he is a well-rounded enough player to where he can slide in at dime packages at cornerback and be productive as a rookie for the Titans secondary. As long as he continues to improve his ball skills and can make some progress as a run defender, I think this will end up being a really, really good pick. I'm not sure if he's going to play strong safety or free safety long term, but I am confident that he will be able to develop and be one of our long-term safeties of the future. Ward will ultimately come in as a 72 overall. All of his archetypes suggest that he is a pretty well-rounded player, which I think is the most important thing here because we're going to use him in a variety of different ways early on. If he can be a little bit more consistent in coverage, particularly in zone, then I think we're going to be looking at a really good starter in our secondary for a while. Don't forget, we have another pick in just a few selections from now. So let's see the players who go off the board here. The Colts select Tyree Sanders, tackle out of TCU. The Jaguars select Pharaoh Ojegbe, tackle out of Texas A&M. He was my backup option for this next pick, so I'm a little disappointed he's off the board, especially to a division rival. Desari Banks goes to the Buccaneers. The Niners are up next, and they will end up selecting William Kendrickson, the tight end out of Texas Tech. The Buffalo Bills are the only team in front of us, and they go with Tyon Christopher, running back out of the University of Alabama. So that'll bring the Titans back on the clock. There were a number of good players who were just selected, but the guy who I wanted here is still on the board. Is it one of these receivers or corners who are continuing to fall? We did just draft somebody in the secondary, and we just added a big-time weapon, so probably not. With the 27th pick in the second round, the Tennessee Titans select Francis Boa-Kamoa, edge rusher out of the University of Buffalo. So Boa-Kamoa will be added to the defense. We're taking a swing on upside. The potential with Boa-Kamoa is very, very high. Now, he's a little bit raw, but the athletic tools are certainly there. Boa-Kamoa has shown a lot of flashes. He's not just potential. He has shown that potential throughout his collegiate career in Buffalo. The problem is he's very inconsistent, especially this year as a senior. So he's got a lot of things to work on with his game. Look at this play right here. He makes the right read, but misses out on the tackle. As a junior, he was really, really good. And going into his senior year, he looked like a projected top 10 pick, but he floundered. He was not good this year. Only 1.5 sacks this season after recording 8.5 sacks a season ago. His tackles for loss also dropped as well by 20. He had 33 TFLs as a junior and only 13 this year. I will say that opponents focused on doubling him a lot more, but that's not an excuse. He played with 2 other NFL caliber defensive linemen at Buffalo, and while the MAC has some good teams, it is still a Group 5 conference. It's not like he was playing against the SEC competition every week. So we know Boa-Kamoa has some really good long-term upside. I'm going to try to get him some snaps as a rookie, especially on passing downs. But he's got a little while until he can become a full-time starter, which is fine because we just signed Michael Pierce and Trey Hendrickson to 1-year deals in free agency, so he can learn behind them. So we add Boa-Kamoa and Amani Ward to the defense in the second round. The only problem is we do not pick again until the 6th round. We have 2 6s and 2 7s. We still have plenty of opportunities to go up and move up the board if we want, but for now, we don't pick in another 121 selections. That's a lot. So we're going to be sitting on the sidelines for now, but expect us to make some moves. Darwin Glanton to the Panthers. Braxton Malone to the Lions. Laquan Daphne, good safety out of Oregon, goes to the Chiefs. E.J. Twyman, nice pick by Washington. They add another weapon to the offense. And the Bengals round out round 2 with Kaishan Lactius, the safety out of Michigan. So a very busy second round for the Titans. They trade Malik Willis for a second rounder. They used that pick to go and get Kyle Pitts, adding him to the offense. And then they trade back up to select Amani Ward, the defensive back out of Georgia, while still holding on to their own pick, drafting Francis Boa-Kamoa from Buffalo. Again, the only problem is we do not pick until round 6, late in round 6 to be specific. Jensen Young out of UCF to the Panthers. I like that pick. He's a good player. That was the pick from the DJ Moore trade. Camden Tinsley to Dallas. Good corner out of Rutgers. And then the Raiders select Jabari Kruger out of Duke. The Fred Biletnikoff winner is off the board. A lot of scouts really like Jabari Kruger. He's big, he's athletic, he's a good jump ball guy, but a lot of scouts believed that he was a Justin Tucker merchant, and he was only good because of his quarterback. Well, lucky for him, guess who the Raiders drafted number 1 overall? Justin Tucker. The Tucker to Kruger connection will continue in the NFL, going from Duke to the Raiders. And then look at the Bears. They draft Drain Ignatius, the quarterback out of Middle Tennessee State. Justin Fields is on the last year of his deal. They are not sold on him at all. They did not like Romeo Colochi enough to draft him number 4 overall, rather focusing on the defense. But they do really like Drain Ignatius, who beat Romeo Colochi head-to-head a few years ago in the college football playoff. Brandon Massey to the Eagles. Darius Coley, running back out of Alabama, to the New York Jets, joining forces with Barrett Cherokee. Eric Lilly to the Saints. He had the game-winning interception in that playoff game that Romeo Colochi lost a couple years ago. Skeeter Darlington to Minnesota. That's a fun pick. Hamza Hamilari to the Dolphins is also a fun pick. Had we not traded for Kyle Pitts, we probably would have drafted Hamza Hamilari. I think he's a really, really good tight end who could have been our starter right away, but given the opportunity to trade for Kyle Pitts, how are we supposed to say no? That'll bring up the Dallas Cowboys. They get Darion Seals, Colochi's partner in crime. He will join forces with Kiki Rodriguez in the backfield for the Cowboys. Ray McLeod to Cleveland. Aiden Milligan, good linebacker out of Nebraska. He is in our division with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Chide Amazu, Minnesota, with their second corner of the day. They drafted one in the first round. Kobe Bean Bryant is a New England Patriot. I thought about drafting Bryant in the second round. I ultimately opted for Francis Boa because there's more athletic upside with him. But I do like Kobe Bryant, another guy who did struggle during his senior season, but as a junior, he was really good. He made a bunch of big plays in big games, and I hope he succeeds with the Patriots. The Ravens continue their obsession with tight ends. Kendall Johnson finally off the board. He was supposed to be a fringe first-round pick. He ends up going to Denver. Matt Bernardi, nice pick by the Dolphins, who are having an A-plus draft. Nearing the end of the third round now, only a few more picks to go. Some defensive tackles going off the board. Rashid Yusuf goes to San Francisco. Yamba Opoka, the big corner, to Seattle. Brandon Pickens, that's a fun pick by the Carolina Panthers, the tight end, broken tackle machine. The other Georgia safety, Gabriel Fanatelli, goes to KC. John Henry Lefuve to Seattle. And Jordan Venter to the Bengals to wrap up the third round. The Titans had 2 third-round picks about 5 minutes ago. They traded away both of them. So they sat on the sidelines for round 3. And again, the Titans don't pick again until round 6, barring a trade, which, knowing us, is certainly likely. Let's move on to day 3 now. There are still some good players on the board. And if certain guys continue to fall, we are going to be aggressive and possibly look to move up. Particularly at the cornerback position, 5 of the top 6 projected players are all corners. It's a really good cornerback class, and teams have taken advantage of that by letting some of these guys go. So there's going to be some real gems on day 3 at the cornerback position, and we could use another cornerback with our top 2 being free agents next year. There's the top one, Colton Young, immediately off the board to the Texans. Eric Harris Sr., another one, to the Las Vegas Raiders. Elijah Shamalat to the Eagles, good linebacker out of Ole Miss. Jorge De La Fuente will be blocking for Malik Willis. Cairo Brown, big safety to the Packers. Yusuf Oluwolu, a steal from the Minnesota Vikings. He's a raw pass rusher, but he is an athletic freak. If you can develop him, he's going to be very good. Minnesota is quietly having themselves a really good draft. The Miami Dolphins have also had a great draft. They add to the pass rush with Sherrod Harris, another raw but toolsy player with upside. Khalil Hassan, that's a fun pick for Dallas. He was misused at Alabama, but he was a former 5-star recruit, really talented player. Khaled Neighbors to the Giants, total steal in the 4th round. He's really good. Jabal Inman, also very good. He goes to the Denver Broncos. We're now halfway through the draft in terms of actual picks as Jorgensen Jupiter, the QB out of Oklahoma State, goes to the Ravens. Looking at his ratings and his development, we could be looking at a potential franchise quarterback with Jorgensen Jupiter, who missed most of his senior season with an injury. The Ravens do already have Lamar Jackson, though, so I'm not sure how that's really going to go about. J.D. McNamara, former highly ranked recruit to the Steelers. Dalton Flemington, staying in the Pacific Northwest to Seattle. Marco Prince, quarterback South Carolina to the Jaguars. Another guy who missed most of the senior year due to injury, but really, really talented player. Lorenzo Rivers, that's a steal here in the 4th round for the Chicago Bears. And then moving down the board, nearing the end of the round, Antonio Bolmaro to the Panthers. Kujay Reddings, the new backup quarterback of the Lions. Reddings led college football in passing touchdowns last year. Anton Heineken to Washington. He was our number 1 day 3 target. And then Graham Fisher, quarterback UNC to the Bengals. Fisher's going to come in as a 75 overall. He's a really polished player, doesn't have elite athletic tools. The physical upside isn't really there, 84 throw power. But he's going to be a good quarterback in this league for like a decade plus. He's probably going to be one of those guys who ends up being kind of like a journeyman, but is a solid starter wherever he goes, kind of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick. So that'll wrap up the 4th round. Again, the Titans sticking on the sidelines here at the round 4. And again, we do not pick in the 5th round, but again, we still may look to move up, especially with some of the guys we really liked starting to fall off the board. So let's see how round 5 plays out here. MJ Hill, the talented running back out of Notre Dame, is an Atlanta Falcon. Nelly Boskets, good receiver to the Bears. Snoopy Darwin Jr. to Philadelphia. The Jets get Chris Gentry, the number 1 receiver from Florida last year. That'll bring us to the Saints, but not for long. The Tennessee Titans are making their move. They're going up here early in the 5th round. Tennessee will be trading their highest 6th rounder, their highest 7th rounder, and a future 6 to move up here to pick 135 while also getting a future 7th as well. Tennessee still has 1 more pick in the 6th and 1 more pick in the 7th after this trade. So the question is, who are we looking to move up for here early in the 5th round? With the 7th pick in round 5 of the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Noah Hampton, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Romeo Colochi's number 1 wide receiver in college will be joining him here with the Tennessee Titans. Noah Hampton's a really, really talented player, and we are super deep at wide receiver, but other than Scotty Pickens, we don't really have many proven guys there. We have young players I like, but we're going to add another player to compete in the building with Noah Hampton, who only has normal development, but I still like his skill set. 6'1", 201 pounds, he's pretty athletic. He's a good route runner, solid hands, good after the catch. He really improved in that area of his game this past season as a senior. This was only his 1 season as a full-time starter, and he was quite good, racking up over 1,100 yards as Oklahoma's number 1 receiver. I think overall, Oklahoma's receiving core was a little bit weaker compared to recent seasons. I don't want to take anything away from Noah Hampton, though. I think he is a good prospect, and if he develops, he could eventually be a starter. I think he's a really high-floor player. I think no matter what, he's going to be a good pro, and I think high-floor receivers are often high-ceiling guys as well, because there are just certain receivers who know how to get open, who know how to play the position, and that's what Noah Hampton is. I think with his size, he has the flexibility to play inside and out. As a junior, he got a lot of snaps in the slot. As a senior, he mainly played on the outside, where again, he was really good, averaging 17.5 yards per reception. So this is a guy who can really stretch the field vertically and make plays. He comes in as a 72 overall. Again, I don't see an early path for him to see the field, but I think he's a good player, and I think he will eventually be able to get some playing time and hopefully form a good connection with his former college quarterback, Romeo Colochi. Let's move forward a little bit. Orji Enyemam, the center out of Nebraska, goes to the Packers. Moving forward, Cade Griffin, nice pick by Dallas in the secondary. A lot of the corners starting to go as Cleotis Glover remains in Miami. He is a Dolphin. Dominic Hines out of Utah goes to the Chargers. Benjamin McKenzie, quarterback, Tennessee, is an Eagle. He will back up Masaru Lee going forward. Jonah Newberger to New England, that's a pretty good pick. Hiekia from Toledo to the Ravens. Zaire Springs, I like him a lot out of Wisconsin. He is a Los Angeles Ram. Getting closer to the end of the 5th round now. A lot of tackles are starting to go off the board. Luther Lexeris to New Orleans, the talented receiver out of Middle Tennessee State. He'll be catching passes from Malik Willis this upcoming season. And then looking towards the final few selections of the round, ZJ Clearwater goes to the Niners. Emmanuel Diallo to Buffalo. Bo Colliers to the Packers. Ike Giote to Carolina. Kevin Shasha Jr. had a great season out wide at Boise State. He is a Los Angeles Ram. Zarif Muar-Zariri to the Chiefs. And then Monty Grant is drafted by the Falcons. He's a very good playmaker. And then DeAndre Donald wraps things up. He is a Bengal. I really like Atlanta's 5th round with 2 big-time additions to the offense with MJ Hill and Monte Grant, the former Georgia Bulldog. As for our Tennessee Titans, we move up. We get Noah Hampton, Colochi's #1 receiver in college, reuniting the dynamic duo here in the NFL. The Titans have their own 6th rounder and their own 7th rounder still left, so they can always package some picks together if they want to move or stick with what they've got. Scooty Young Jr., the quarterback out of Miami, is off the board here to the Houston Texans. He's an intriguing player, only a 65, but he is hidden. So I'm kind of curious to see how he develops. I don't think he'll be challenging for the starting spot anytime soon, but he's an intriguing quarterback with a lot of physical upside who just was quite never able to figure it out in college. Marcus Clayton, that's a really good pick by Atlanta. Wenglen Wall to the Bears, Wesley Marston to the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's move a little bit forward now. Kalen Sillo to the Packers. That's a nice pick. Green Bay's had a pretty good draft. The Dallas Cowboys up next. They'll go with Travis Fontenot out of Alabama. Owen French, the safety from Tennessee, is a steal for the Cleveland Browns, as is John Chernoff, going to the New York Giants. James Morgan, the guard from Oklahoma, is a Bronco, one of Romeo Colochi's offensive linemen in college. Speaking of offensive linemen, we've got a lot of them coming off the board. Now we've got some defensive linemen as well. A lot of guys in the trenches here as the Titans get pretty close to their second to last pick of the day. Only a few selections away. The Bucs get J.J. Woods out of Pitt. Robert Johnson.
And the Bills get Trayshawn Nixon, the physically talented receiver out of Louisiana Tech. So that'll bring the Titans back on the clock with their second to last pick of the day. There's a lot of good skill position players. The other Oklahoma receiver, Eric Denman's still on the board. You got a lot of running backs. Not that the Titans need a running back at all. So it'll be interesting to see which way they look towards with this selection. With the 27th pick in the 6th round, the Tennessee Titans select Kane Cadeau, offensive tackle out of Louisville. This is a big kid, 6'5", 350 pounds. The Titans are hoping he can provide some depth. They still don't really know who their starting left tackle is this year. It probably won't be Cadeau. He only has normal development. The 81 strength rating is a little bit lower than I had hoped for, but I do think he is pretty polished as a pass protector, and if nothing else, will be a good backup. Cadeau has played for a Louisville offense who, quite frankly, has not been very good. However, during his 3 years as a starter, he has improved, especially in the run game, and he's only allowed 8 sacks during that 3-year stretch, which is quite solid, considering the rest of the offensive line has been pretty bad. Cadeau has shown consistent improvement over the last 3 years, so I think that linear development is a sign that he should continue to improve once he makes it into the NFL. We're not banking on him being our franchise left tackle, but if he can develop into a guy who can be a swing tackle or somebody who can start and play serviceable if needed, then I think this will be a good pick here in the late 6th round, although he is only a 66 overall with normal development. Let's round out the rest of the 6th round now. Shames Gilmore, nice pick by Detroit. McKinley Forrester to Washington, and the Bengals finish it off with the hybrid safety linebacker Thibodeau D'Entrant out of Syracuse. So the Titans go for a simple route in the 6th round. They don't move up, they don't move down, they just stick with their pick, adding some depth on the offensive line with Kane Cadeau, the tackle out of Louisville. That'll bring us into the 7th and final round of the day. The Titans still had their own 7th as well. So again, presumably, we will look to keep that pick. As Otis Washington is off the board to the Texans. That is a steal in the 7th round. I think he's a day 2 talent. Brandon Anderson II was my target here. He ends up going to the Atlanta Falcons. I thought he would last a little bit longer, so it's kind of unfortunate that that's not the case. Garrett Rodriguez, nice pick to the Packers, talented receiver. Raheem Rocket Jr. to New Orleans. Jaden Williams, talented linebacker out of Rice. Nolan Franchise, the running back from Tennessee, is a Giant. Cam Lewis, wide receiver, good pick by the Steelers. Getting pretty close to our pick now, just a few selections away at this point. Matthew Smiley to the Rams. Cannonball Royale, nice pick by the Steelers. And then the Seahawks go with Forrest Holloway. He is 99 throw power and could challenge Jackson Kayuma in a few years as the starting quarterback. Gideon Atwater to the Niners, and the Bills will select Ate Enidale, the running back out of Ball State. So that'll bring the Titans back on the clock. All of the talent here is in the offensive skill positions at running back and wide receiver. I did not want to draft a skill position player here because we've already drafted a receiver. We traded for one today in Kyle Pitts, and we have a lot of running backs, but the value might be too good to pass up. With the 27th pick of the 7th round, the Tennessee Titans select Micah McDuffie, running back out of Bowling Green State. So McDuffie will be the Titans' final selection here in Season 3. This marks the third consecutive season where the Titans have drafted a running back. Rocket Reddick was in our first draft. Obviously, Elijah Bryant was a pretty high pick last year and a focal point for this team's future. And now Micah McDuffie, the Bowling Green Falcon, is Tennessee's final pick of the day as he comes in with normal development. We do not need a running back at all. I was not planning on drafting one, but McDuffie is absolutely an NFL caliber player. For him to fall this late into the 7th round is a little bit ridiculous. Bowling Green was one of the best Group 5 teams in all of college football. A lot of people believed that they deserved to make the college football playoff over a team like, ironically, Oklahoma. While that was kind of proven wrong by Oklahoma going to the championship, that doesn't diminish how good Bowling Green was. And the reason why they were so good was Micah McDuffie. He was the best player in the MAC conference, period, this year. He's been their starting running back since his true freshman season, but this year he took it up a notch with 6 yards a carry, almost 100 yards a game. His receiving numbers are not that spectacular. I think he'll be a better receiver in the NFL. Bowling Green had 3 different quarterbacks play for them this year, so it's not really his fault that he didn't put up the best receiving numbers as he comes in as a 71 overall. So I think my assessment of him is pretty accurate. He's a very talented player who should not have fallen to the 7th round. I don't know how he's going to see the field early on, but he's too good to not have a role. Malachi McDaniel, I really like that pick by the Texans, the corner out of Georgia. D'Angelo Hill to Washington. And then Mamadi Samasa, the pass rusher out of Virginia, was Mr. Irrelevant to the Bengals. So that'll wrap up round 7. Again, pretty straightforward. We keep our pick, and we were too tempted by the value of Micah McDuffie, a Bowling Green running back, to let him fall any farther. And he is our final pick of the day. So our draft class features 6 players, technically 7 if you include the acquisition of Kyle Pitts. And I think this draft ended up being a really good one for us. We flipped the trajectory of this franchise by adding some big-time players on defense with Amani Ward and Francis Boa-Kamoa, by trading for Kyle Pitts, adding him to the offense, and obviously the biggest move of all, moving up to the number 5 pick to select Romeo Colochi, and thus trading away Malik Willis to New Orleans in order to help us get Kyle Pitts. So we still have a question mark in terms of the offensive tackle situation, but other than that, I think the team is set and ready to go for season number 4. In the next episode, we'll briefly go through the preseason. We will determine what we're going to do at left tackle, whether we make a trade for somebody or just stick with the guys that we currently have on the roster. We're also going to have our opening game in the next episode on the road against Trey Lance and the San Francisco 49ers, so it should be a pretty fun matchup there. That'll wrap up the episode. A really fun draft here. As you guys know, I put a ton of work into these draft episodes, so make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out. Tighten up. Marlins franchise draft, by the way, is premiering tomorrow as well.